What's going on, YouTube family? Today we're going to be talking about how you get an EV for 50% off. If you don't believe me, make sure you stay tuned to the end of the video. Now, the reason why I'm making this video is because I was reached out by a group of subscribers that are trying to do some sort of class action lawsuit against Tesla. I hopped on the phone with these guys. They proceeded to tell me that they were misled because they said that Teslas were in high demand, that the resale value was good, and that they were always going to get their money back and maybe even possibly make money, which I kind of laughed and chuckled and said, go ahead, continue. And they proceeded to tell me that they want to sue because they've lost over 50% of their value in the last year and a half. And so I proceeded to tell them, unfortunately, you can't do that because this is not anything new in the automotive industry. Whether your car is powered by gas or batteries, they are a depreciating asset and you will lose a lot of money. I've seen them on Rolls Royces, Bentleys, Mercedes, BMWs. Sometimes the values just drop. And unfortunately, EVs seem to be following this trend because the demand is simply not there. And so everyone's always looking for somebody to blame. And so today we're going to talk about the only people to blame is the people that actually bought them and the hype train that followed, because what a lot of people paid for these EVs will blow your mind. And some of these people paid well over MSRP to buy these things. So the first one we're going to be talking about is the Tesla Plaid. Now, when this thing came out a few years ago, everybody wanted one. It was the most hyped EV I think I've ever seen besides the Cybertruck. And so when people were buying these things, a lot of people were paying $129,000 for a fully loaded model. But on top of that, there were people that were literally buying them just to flip on the secondary market, getting upwards of $160,000, $170,000. So just keep that in mind. Somebody out there paid $170,000 for one of these cars. Now, let's just say that you are a loyal Tesla fan and you decided to keep your Model S Plaid. What was it worth 1 year later? Well, you paid let's say $29,000. 1 year after that, the car was worth $81,000. So you lost a massive amount of value in just a single year. But that's okay. Maybe it's going to balance out and keep up. Fast forward 6 months and it's dropped to $65,000 in value. So now people are starting to get upset because they've already lost over 50% of the value in less than 2 years, which is very scary. But now we're going on this trend where EVs are tending to go even lower because banks don't want to finance them because of the risk of the falling values. Because remember, some banks really have $129,000 loans still on these cars a year and a half later. So they're predicting that in the last 30 days and in the next 30 days, it's going to be selling between $63,000 and $64,000. I think it's going to be less than that. I think it's going to be in the mid 50s, to be honest with you, because when I see these things running at auction, nobody's bidding. It's because a lot of these banks, like I said, don't want to finance these cars because the values are falling too quickly and nobody wants to catch a falling knife. So the Tesla you see on the screen is the VIN number that we're using for the auction numbers. Now, this is saying that this car would sell somewhere between $63,000 at auction. But if you see right here, the car is listed for $74,000. So how can it be $10,000 more than what it's currently worth? Now remember, a few months ago, it might have been worth that. So they may have purchased it on the way down thinking they got a great deal because it went from 129 down to maybe 74,000. But now that it's down around $60,000 and you could probably get them for less than that at auction, this guy is stuck with it at $74,999. So they're $10,000 over book. Now, I'm sure there's probably some wiggle room and they know that they're stuck in this car, but this is why I tell people this is why you're not seeing prices go down, because as values drop, banks or dealers that have purchased them in the last 6 months don't want to lose that much money, so they're trying to hold on to these cars to find basically another sucker, somebody that's dumb enough to buy this and overpay for it. And unfortunately, here in America, there's no shortage of dummies that will overpay for a car they can't afford. So the chart in front of you is from Bring a Trailer. And as you can see, it started somewhere around $140,000 and it's slowly trickling down all the way to $60,000 for a Model S Plaid. So this is just showing you the trending market from 2021 to 2024, what these cars are currently going for and how much they're basically depreciating. Now, another car that was met with a lot of hype was the Porsche Taycan. People absolutely love these things. Now, I actually like the interior of this. I think the build quality is way better than Tesla. If you haven't had a chance to drive one, please do. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. But I remember the Turbo S models were going for $180,000 to $190,000. And I remember some of these things selling for over $200,000 back in 2022. So let's just say you paid $189 for this thing, brand new from the dealer. What was the value 1 year later? Well, if you look right here, it dropped all the way to $81,000. That's a pretty big steep. That's almost $100,000 lost in a single year, which is mind-blowing. Fast forward 6 months, now they dropped to all the way to $65,000. And in the next 30 days, they're estimating that it's going to be around 64 to 63,000. Now, do you notice any trend since the Tesla and this one? All these luxury EVs seem to be falling around 40 to 50 to $60,000. The reason why is because I think this is what the real value of the cars are. They're not worth $100 and something thousand. If I'm paying 180 grand for something like this, I'm buying an R8. I'm not going to buy a Porsche Taycan, or I'd probably buy a Porsche 911 Turbo. But you can kind of see that all these values are slowly starting to drop to this $50,000 to $60,000 range, which I think is in line for what these cars are really worth. Now, right here is the ad of the VIN I used for this makeup to figure out the values. But as you can see, this car is listed for $158,000. Now, why is this car valued so much if all the other Turbo S's are going for around $60,000, $70,000 at auction? It's more than likely this guy paid way too much, or he thinks he's got something special. And unfortunately, whoever's going to buy this car is going to get shafted by depreciation hardcore. So this is why I tell a lot of people, look for the values, wait. This is a perfect example of why you should not buy a car now, because as you see the values dropping, dealers are going to be forced to take it in the shorts or basically give this car away, because to basically be upside down $40,000 in a car that you're trying to retail is a very, very bad thing. So this chart right here is from Bring a Trailer, and this shows all the Taycans that were basically turbos. And as you can see, we started somewhere over $200,000 in 2022, but as we've moved forward, you can start to see these things drop all the way down to $65,000 to $80,000. So from 200K to 65,000 bucks is a huge drop, but this shows the trend of, once again, these cars not bringing the value of what they thought they were. The demand is simply not there for these cars. I think people figured out that the true value of these cars are somewhere around 65,000. So the next one we're going to be talking about is the Rivian RT1. Now, I actually like this truck. This truck runs great. The interior, the build quality is much better than Tesla. Everything seems to function correctly. I actually like this truck. And I remember making a joke, I think a year ago, saying, once these things get to 50 grand, I might buy one. Well, we're getting really close, so I may have to pick one of these things up. Now, when these things came out, they were selling for somewhere around $78,000 to $85,000 at MSRP, but these things were going at auction for $120,000, $130,000, $150,000. This was the new electric truck that came out before the Cybertruck. So it met with a lot of hype, people got around it and winded up overpaying for it. So let's just say you purchased this one for MSRP for somewhere around $90,000. If we look fast forward 1 year later, you're somewhere around $73,000 in value. Now it's dropped quite a bit, but not as bad as some of the others. But if we fast forward 6 months from now, you could see that it dropped to 64. And if we fast forward 30 days, you could see right here that it's all zeros. Why is that? The reason is the last 6 that I saw that sold at auction were all in the 40s. Which is bad. So they're trying not to put a market on there because they know that banks and dealers read this. So if you purchased one 60 days ago for, let's say, $55,000, and all of a sudden now it's worth 40-something thousand, you're going to be in a world of hurt. So remember how like Robinhood and some of these stock trading apps will always stop the trading if the values drop too quickly? I feel like Cox or Manheim is doing the exact same thing. They don't want to show the real value of the cars. Because if you look right here down below, it says estimated retail value is somewhere around $54,000. Now that just lets you know that if this thing drops to 40, this thing's going to be under 50. It's going to be $49,000, $51,000. So this truck is going to become very affordable in the next 3 to 4 months. So let's go ahead and take a look at the Bring a Trailer chart. Now you can see they were selling for somewhere around $120,000 at the peak, but as you can see, they're trickling on down, and you can see the last 3 here sold for $53,000, and that car only had 6,600 miles. So this definitely shows you how fast they're dropping and how people are basically walking away from some of these EVs. So the next one we're going to be talking about is another vehicle that was met with a lot of hype. People absolutely love this thing, and to be honest, I drove one. I wouldn't mind buying one of these if it gets around 60-something thousand, which I believe it's on pace to do that. It is the Hummer EV. Now, when these things came out, they were retailing around $120,000. But I don't know if you guys remember Bring a Trailer and some of these other things, people were paying over $200,000 for these EVs. I remember my buddy had the first allocation here in Vegas. He literally drove it down the street and somebody offered him 200 grand and he sold it, put another order in and decided to wait. So his goal is basically he sold his Corvette and his EV allocation, which will basically pay cash for his next Hummer, which is absolutely insane. But that just shows you how crazy the market was less than 2 years ago. But if you paid, let's just say, instead of $200,000, which unfortunately a lot of idiots did, let's just say you paid retail, 120 something thousand dollars. What is that car worth today? Now, if you look, last year, it's blank. Now, when I checked this 3 months ago, this number was 160 something thousand dollars. I don't know why they took it away, but it actually went up in value because people were paying $200,000 for it. 6 months was somewhere around like $120,000 back at retail. But if we look in the last 30 days, there's enough of them that's passed through the auction that they decided to give it a value of $90,000. Now, there are tons of these things all over the place. Same thing, that were purchased to flip. They weren't purchased to drive. People thought these allocations were gold, and so they decided to turn around and sell these things. If you were looking at today buying one, you can get these things in the $90,000 price range. They're all over. Do not go to the dealership. Look on Craigslist, look on Facebook. You will see, I think the cheapest one I saw was $91,000. And I think the car had 3,300 miles, which is a smoking deal. You just saved $30,000 from when somebody bought it brand new. But just imagine, like I said, you've had that much of a depreciation curve in less than a year. Now, here's one for sale in Las Vegas that you could buy today for $89,000. Now, I know this is just the BS number. I'm sure when you get there, there's probably going to be $2,000 to $3,000 in extra fees. But let's just round it up to $93,000. That is extremely cheap. And this thing's only got 1,400 miles. It's kind of that cool gray color with some accents. It's already got lights. Somebody put some money into it already. So this just shows you where the market's at. So if they're able to only get $89,000 for this car, I bet you there's something out there that you could find that's probably even cheaper. On April 2022, somebody on Bring a Trailer bought this thing for $275,000. So that means they lost over $185,000 in value in less than a year. Whoever was that must have been absolutely pissed just to lose that much money that quickly. But remember, EVs are the future and everybody wants EVs. That's what they kept pumping down your throat. And now the government's changing their things. They literally been told by the automotive industry they don't want to put out EVs. Nobody wants them. They're not selling. And so I think a lot of things are going to change. They're probably going to dip even further. All right, I saved the best for the last. The most hyped up EV of all time is the Tesla Cybertruck. Now, these things were going for absolutely astronomical numbers. Now, I'm going to show you a clip from an actual auction at Mannheim. It made record-breaking news. Now, before this video happened, or before this auction happened, I made a video talking about how I believe in less than 1 year, Tesla Cybertrucks will be selling for $80,000. You can look at my page. It's called The Tesla Cybertruck Sucks. Check that out. Mark that date. This car sold at auction for $244,000. So some knucklehead out there paid way too much money because it was the first Cybertruck that actually rolled through the auction. And so guess what happened? After that hit the news, everybody that owned a Cybertruck decided, well, my Cybertruck's worth $200,000. And so they all started going up for sale. And literally overnight, you saw hundreds of Cybertrucks, even though there was only 1,300 of these things made so far, or maybe 1,400 now, there was hundreds of them up for sale because nobody wanted them. Everybody bought them to flip. Nobody bought them to keep them. Maybe, I think I know 2 people that actually did, and they've already sold them because they didn't like them. But this is what was going on. And so now the market's flooded with all these cars. What did that do to the pricing? Did they all get $200-something thousand? Of course not. The market absolutely cratered. I can literally week by week tell you what happened. 3 weeks after that, they went from 200 and something to 180. From 180 to 150. To 150 to 130. And now they're selling somewhere in the $90,000 range. You can see them all over Facebook, Craigslist. There's, I think, 2 of them here in Vegas that are like $105,000 at dealerships. I'll pull one of these things up. But as we look at the MMR values, remember, people paid $120,000, $130,000 for these things at MSRP. So most people winded up paying over because they bought them secondhand. But let's just say you purchased it like that. What would happen 1 year from now? If you look, there's no price. Once again, this used to be a crazy number. This used to be $180,000, $190,000. They took it off because they don't want to show how bad it's basically failing. 6 months ago, same thing. It was like at $140,000, $150,000. Now it's back down to $120,000. I guarantee you, you see how there's no next month projections? They're going to be at 100 or maybe even just a little bit lower, 99 something thousand. Because I've talked to a few of my wholesale friends that have gotten offers to purchase them. They're not going any higher than $95,000 because they don't want to get stuck, because they also believe that this market is collapsing. That now that more and more things are coming out about this truck, that not a lot of people liked it. It's not a real truck. They're just, people are basically peeling them apart and they're falling apart and they're just not getting really great reviews. And so that's why I put that funny picture there. Hopefully you guys enjoy that one. It took me about 20 minutes to find on the internet. But they're saying right now, if you were to buy one retail, you should pay somewhere around $121,000. And I believe that that number is only going to go lower. So let's go ahead and check out the magical chart from Bring a Trailer and see what was going on. So as you can see here, over the last year, this is 2024, it went from 160, because remember, everybody wanted 200 something thousand dollars for their car and they wouldn't take a penny less. They started selling 160, 140, 120. And then the last three didn't break $100,000 on Bring a Trailer, and they're all no sales, which is crazy. So that just shows you that, people, I bet you some of these people probably paid upwards of 150, maybe even, I don't know if any of these guys paid $200,000, but there was a lot of people paying way too much for cars that just simply weren't worth it. So when it comes to the EV hype train, you can't blame anybody but yourself. Nobody put a gun to your head, told you to pay $50,000 or $100,000 over MSRP for an EV when you really never knew what the market was going to do with that. I know a lot of people speculated, there was a lot of money flowing out there, but as you can see, now that the money's dried up, lending is getting much harder to get for these cars, and a lot of banks don't really want to do anything with EVs because of the falling values. It's only going to drag them down worse. So if you're planning on holding your EV, you might as well hold it for a long time. If you're thinking about selling it, I would recommend checking the values, because a lot of people are getting rude awakenings when they take down their car they stole $100,000 on to find out it's only worth about $50,000. And this is where we're going to wrap up the video. You can buy a lot of these cars for literally 50% of what they were going for last year, which is very mind-blowing to think about. I remember people were crying, cars are too expensive, I can never afford them. Well, here you go, they're 50% cheaper. So if you want an EV and you want to catch a falling knife, now is your time. I think they're gonna dip a little bit more. I don't think they're gonna bottom out like, they're only gonna be worth 10 grand, but I do think the luxury market is gonna basically be between that $40,000, $50,000 range. And I think economy cars are gonna probably go to around maybe $15,000 to $18,000, because we've seen Kias. I didn't even do the Kia EV6. That thing is a great car, and same thing, it lost 50% of its value in a year. A lot of these cars just pretty much fell flat on their face. So if you're thinking about buying one, my recommendation, do not buy one brand new. Buy one used, get 50% off. And you see some of these cars that I showed you, they only got 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 miles. So might as well save yourself 50% of the money and buy a used EV. But anyways, I'd love to know your opinions in the comment section below. Are you thinking about buying an EV? What are your opinions on EVs? Do you think they're great? Do you think they suck? Do you think they're the future? Please let me know. And once again, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next video.